The political spectrum is poorly defined in the West. This leads to a manipulation of the political landscape, of politics as a whole, and is arguably a form of mind control which prevents the general public from seeing the real options that are available to them. This manipulation has only been made possible by the removal of the concept of the Tao, Yin and Yang, from Western thought. Please see the earlier videos for more context. So, the thesis of this video is that the Tao are the two ultimate archetypal spirits and minds. They are the archetypes of the two different worldviews of reality. They are the true political spectrum, and any other representation is incomplete. There's a lot of discussion about the political spectrum in the West, but like all Western thought, it's hamstrung by the absence of the rational recognition of the Tao, the two opposing principles of nature and the foundation of all knowledge. So discussions abound, but they have the clarity of mud, no resolution, and offer little progress in understanding. I'd suggest that open-mindedness and due diligence is what made the West great, and its loss is the real cause of our problems. So if we look at the so-called traditional political spectrum, we see that we have communism, the extreme left, then we have the Labour Party, which is sort of supposedly moderate left, we have the centre, which would be the Liberal Democrats in the UK, and on the right we have the Conservatives, and on the far right we would have fascism. UKIP, I guess, would be slightly to the right, according to this, of the Conservatives. So this is the version we're familiar with, but it doesn't seem very complete or very useful. And both ends of the spectrum are authoritarian. There's no place for ideologies such as voluntarism. Also, all of these ideologies are forms of socialism, as if that was all that was available. And, it's sometimes depicted as a circle to show this, showing how communism and fascism are very similar, highly authoritarian regimes. So, some people would say, and I would concur, that collectivism versus individualism is one of the fundamental differences between left and right. The political left has always been associated with collectivism, the rights of groups and collectives. The ethos of the political left is the group is more important than the individual, and so the individual is subservient to the group. So this is authoritarianism. The political right has always been associated with individualism and the rights of the individual. The ethos of the right is the individual is more important than the group. Thus the right is associated with libertarianism, where the will of the group is subservient to the individual. The left desires a leader, because the left is really the yin mind, the mind of the child. So the left desires a leader, and the right desires independence, because it's the mind of the adult. The left is characterised by seeking external authority, a leader for the group, or to be part of a group, to be under a leader. The yin mind of the left is uncreative and confused. It has no stability or foundation, and so it seeks a leader/parent figure which can provide certainty and answers in what to them is a chaotic and confusing world. All groups need leaders. Those who join groups are either seeking to be led or to lead. That is the purpose and appeal of the group. But groups are divisive and thus self-contradictory. See the article on Two Minds for more. The right, on the other hand, seeks freedom from leaders. They desire independence and to follow their own internal authority. The left is large government, right is small government, or even no government. As the left prefers collectives and seeks authority, it favours a larger government, its ultimate expression being communism, in which there is nothing but government. And as the right prefers individuals and seeks freedom, it favours a smaller government, its ultimate expression being anarchism, in which there is no government at all. And some would argue that the ideal is balance. Well, certainly in the yin and yang scheme of things, you want a balance between the two. And the appropriate balance between the two ideologies in a society is where the group stands up for the rights of the individual, i.e. where everyone makes it their business to work together to protect each other's rights against tyranny. This is the true middle ground of politics and the foundational principle of common law. It's also the battle cry of the Four Musketeers, all for one and one for all. The problem is groups are naturally divisive, as I've said. They seek only to protect their in-group, usually at the expense of the out-group. Groups are yin and must be carefully managed by yang, else they will create chaos. That is their nature. The true left is yin, and the true right is yang. So yang is right, yin is wrong. The true political left has no lawful validity because it's the movement for the destruction of law and order. That is its true nature, and it exists only to be prevented. It should never be allowed. Because this is what yin is. Just as we have to fight against the processes of nature that cause our buildings and machines to degrade over time by performing maintenance and so on, we have to fight against destructive ideologies to maintain our society and our homes. Yin is the natural process of decay and destruction that exists within nature. It's the murderous force of natural selection in action. The yin mind is the adversary, the tester, and it is the true political left. It's the mind of the psychopath who will keep pushing you until you push back or die. That is its true nature. It doesn't really mind which, push back or die. In fact, it may prefer that you push back because it's more fun. Anyhow, the left can never be rational or reasonable, helpful, altruistic or honest because it stands in opposition to all of those things. That's its nature. The left can never be right, it can only be wrong. How the political left can survive, considering that it's always essentially wrong, illogical and destructive, is because everyone in the world is born with the yin mind of the animal. So its ideology appeals to people, and it appeals via the power of illogic. There is a power in illogic and getting people to believe contradictory or false things. If you tell a gullible person an illogical falsehood that appeals to their emotions, they will find a way to rationalise it. For example, many people believe that simply believing that Jesus is God will ensure them a place in heaven, even though Jesus never said that, and it's entirely illogical. It makes no sense at all, but it's a very appealing message to the weak-minded. They are told that all they have to do is believe this thing, and their work is done. It makes them already good and part of a special club of good people whose entrance to heaven is guaranteed. The only reason one would hold such a belief is for emotional reasons. It's an emotional comfort blanket which protects you from the harsh reality that, if you genuinely want to be a good person, you have to work really hard at it for the whole of your life. Another good example is the climate change religion, which is thoroughly illogical, unscientific poppycock. The climate on Earth has never been static. CO2 is constantly being sequestered so it doesn't build up, and it diverts attention from the real problems of domestic, industrial and agricultural chemical pollution, which is a proper threat. But its followers are convinced that they're a special group of uniquely compassionate people who really should be in charge of running the world. It's a familiar story. I would argue that the route to material and spiritual enlightenment is the unwavering pursuit of the truth through observation and hard thinking. This is to make God, which is truth, your aim, above the desires of your emotions and your animal yin mind in general. It is to see reality as it truly is, not as you would like it to be. It's the same thing as growing up, and it takes effort. Thinking is very hard, and most people can't do it at all, so the effort they make in rationalising their beliefs, even though it's not actual thinking, is still a large mental expense for them. And when you put so much effort into building your belief system, the effort bonds you to it. You remember how much work it was and know that to change it would take much more work than forming it did. So when presented with facts that contradict its worldview, the yin mind sees it purely as an assault on its happiness. It can't conceive of ever being able to do the work. It would require to integrate those facts. It's far too much. To insinuate that it should attempt such a task, it takes as an insult. They get angry with their conscience because it's telling them to listen, but they project that anger out onto the external world. Thus, in their mind, the person presenting the info is an evil person who's only trying to make them feel bad. Facts are irrelevant and feelings matter. Note that rationalising is not the same as logic. It's a yin form of reason in which the aim is not to find facts but to gather a shield of beliefs which generate positive emotions. It's much easier than real thinking, but it still takes some effort. This is how most religions hook their followers, by getting them to emotionally bond to illogic, which is essentially mental slavery to Yin, the goddess, or Satan. Government as natural selection. There can only be one natural end result of giving away your individual authority to a leader, i.e. making yourself yin to a human authority, and that is to incur destruction. It inevitably results in psychopaths taking control, an exponential growth in the size of government, and in its capacity for evil and committing mass murder, as night follows day. If you think Western governments are not currently involved in liberating citizens, their own citizens from life, then consider the tightly controlled health sector, Judge them not by their words but by their fruits. Humans have not escaped Darwinian selection. Our predators used to be bears and wolves, but now, since we defeated our animal predators, it's other people that predate on us, the psychopaths. Natural selection never stops, and the psychopaths who rule the world are a legitimate force of nature, and that is now forcefully selecting against people for their abandonment of truth. Truth is God, truth is reality, and so God is reality, and reality is nature. People have turned away from reality, and so reality, which is nature, has to correct them. The way the goddess does that is usually extremely unpleasant. So I would urge people to return to the straight path of humility to God, because it's much nicer. The left is the political force that is Satan. It's tempting people into immorality with promises of benefits. The whole left ethos is vote for us, we'll steal money from other people and give it to you. And all government these days is hard left, authoritarian, and it's based on slavery. So the true political spectrum is Yin on the left, which is collectivism, and Yang on the right, which is individualism. The left is all about groups and interdependent leaders and followers, whereas the right is just independent individuals. The left is authoritarianism, the right is libertarianism. Left is large government, right is small government. On the left, the government makes the laws. On the right, the people discover God's laws. This is an important point. The right believes that God creates the law and we discover it. We don't make it up. We can't make the law, no more than we could change the laws of physics. The laws of morality are subject to the same restrictions. So moving on the left, government owns all the property. So in communism, the government owns everything, and you. And on the right, the people own all the property and the government owns nothing. Well, there isn't even a government. And these correspond to all of the yin and yang properties that we might find in our list. So a leftist government or a regime is many and complicated. It incurs chaos, it's selfish, it's unreasonable, it's based on emotion and is illogical. It is a slavery authority system. It incurs violence, death, lies, and it is the mind of the psychopath. And on the right, we have all of the positive yang properties. So a yang system of social order is singular and simple. It creates order. It's altruistic and helps everybody. Charitable. It's reasonable. It uses logic. It's rational. It delivers freedom and liberty, peace, more life, more truth, and it is the mind of the empath. So this is the real, true political spectrum. Those are the opposites, and everything does fit into it. Sometimes you might have to figure out. I mean, obviously, political parties may be a mixture of these things because these are the extremes, and few people would be completely on the extreme or ideologies. Anyway, nationalism, is it left or right? Well, it must be on the left because it's concerned with a group identity. Its opposite would be the ideology of globalism, or at least no borders, in a sense. I'm not saying that no borders is right in the modern day. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But globalism would be on the right because it's concerned with individual freedoms to trade and travel and so on. All the mainstream UK political parties are globalist, which is right, as nationalism, which is left, is frowned upon. But they refer to nationalism as far right, and this miscategorisation is quite confusing and, well, amusing too. But it seems that their version of globalism is only for the rich. It's not true globalism. It's not for you and I. You know, poor people aren't really able to take advantage of any of the benefits of this globalism. We just lose through it. Nazism is also popularly categorised as far right, but it's National Socialism, which are both leftist ideologies. And as I've said, far right is anarchism. It's no government. That's the true far right. And yeah, anyway. So traditionalism, it can be thought of as yin or yang. It's the view that historical laws and ways are good and should be maintained, and progressivism is the view that they should be changed. Traditionalism is really yin because it's based in the past and it's about stasis and not change. And progressivism is yang because it's change. People may have trouble not viewing progressivism negatively, but consider its beneficial form as like the constant refinement of science or real moral law, like as a constant improvement. The reason most people consider traditionalism to be right is because we had right-leaning traditions, and people liked them because they were fair. So we're harking back to a yang system. If those traditions were abject destruction through tyranny, then few people would be harking back to it, and there would be few traditionalists in that context. So why do we have this confusion about the political spectrum? Well, it's been leftized, it seems, for political reasons by left-leaning authoritarian governments. In my opinion, it has been depicted this way to hide certain political philosophies, i.e. the true right of anarchism, voluntarism. That's never discussed in the mainstream. So all of the UK political parties are quite a long way left of centre, according to this understanding. And it includes the Tories, who have maintained high levels of government, taxation and regulation during all of their parliaments. It's always been an increase in the amount of authority, never a reduction, even though they're supposed to be a right-wing party. So they're not centre-right as they claim. They are marginally to the right of Labour, which is basically far left. They're just a hair's breadth away from communism. So I would categorise the Tories as medium far left. And this is the breadth of the political spectrum in the UK. It goes from extreme far left to medium far left. There are no really right-wing parties. There is a Libertarian Party, but who's heard of them? Anyway. If you wonder, about taxes, because the mark of a communist or a left-wing Yin government is that it's going to try and steal all of your property as much as possible and give it to its friends, the rich. And tax rates in the UK are widely reported as being half of what they actually are, because we're told it's about 35%, which is true if you're just considering your income. So yeah, okay, your income is taxed on 35%, but then you have to pay about 35% on everything else that you buy, maybe more. So it actually works out to be about 70% of your income goes as tax in the UK. And, well, this is basically pretty close to slavery, I would have thought. They leave you with just about enough to live on. Just about enough for the common person. Anyway, I hope that stimulates a bit of discussion. Thanks for watching the video. I'll catch you later.